Alien Baron gave his paralyzed daughter as a joke. The human saw her true worth. HFY Sci-Fi story. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's story. In today's tale, we follow a journey unlike any other, one that tests the limits of humanity's kindness and strength. What happens when a human steps in to help an alien girl who has been abandoned by her powerful family? Let's find out. Adam Carter stood alone on the desolate planet, the winds howling around him like a ghostly choir. The landscape was barren, covered in thick layers of ash from the previous war. It had been days since he had last heard from his team, and even though he was trained for situations like this, the isolation was starting to wear on him. His communicator was down, and his backup supply was running low. Adam had always known that war could be unforgiving, but the silence of space was something that could break even the toughest soldiers. As he trudged through the dirt, his eyes scanned the horizon for any sign of life, any hope of survival. Then, in the distance, he saw something that stopped him in his tracks, a faint glimmer, almost like a reflection of light. His curiosity piqued. He made his way toward it. The closer he got, the more he could make out the figure of a woman. No, not just any woman, but an alien, a tall, striking being with silver blue skin and long white hair, slumped on the ground, her limbs twisted in unnatural ways. She was lying in a pool of her own blood, her body limp, her eyes vacant and filled with despair. Adam's heart clenched as he rushed to her side. He knelt beside her, checking for signs of life. Despite her severe injuries, he could tell that she wasn't dead yet. Her breathing was shallow, barely noticeable. This wasn't just any alien. This was a princess, the daughter of a powerful baron. She had been discarded, thrown aside like an object of no value. His mind raced, trying to figure out what had happened, why she was left here to die. "Hey," Adam whispered, his voice hoarse. "Can you hear me?" For a moment, there was no response, but then her eyes flickered open. They were a vibrant shade of violet, sharp and full of fire, despite the weakness she must have felt. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam frowned, his training kicking in. "I'm Adam. I'm not here to hurt you." The alien girl, her silver hair now matted with dirt, eyed him with distrust, but there was something in her gaze, a mix of curiosity and something else, something deeper. She seemed to hesitate before she spoke again. "Why? Why are you helping me?" Adam's eyes softened. "Because no one else will. And I'm not about to leave you here to die." Her gaze hardened for a moment, then softened just slightly. "You are a fool," she muttered. Adam didn't flinch. "Maybe, but I don't leave people behind, not even in the middle of a war." As he carefully lifted her from the ground, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just another rescue mission. There was something about her, something that made him want to protect her, despite the strange circumstances. The princess's name was Lara, and as Adam carried her back to the shelter he had found earlier, he couldn't help but wonder what had led to her abandonment. The more he helped her, the more he realized that this alien, despite her position and the power she once held, was as vulnerable as any human. But unlike most humans, Lara had never known kindness from others until now. As he set her down and tended to her wounds, he thought about the consequences of his actions. He was in the middle of enemy territory, and if anyone found out that he had saved her, there would be hell to pay. But in that moment, none of that mattered. Lara needed him, and he wasn't about to let her down. In the coming days, as Lara's health began to improve under his care, Adam would learn just how much more was at stake than his own survival. What started as a simple rescue mission would soon evolve into something much greater, and the fate of a war-torn galaxy would rest in the hands of one human who believed in doing what was right. Adam's choice to help Lara had only just begun to shape their shared destiny, and neither of them had any idea of the storm they were about to face together. As the days passed, Adam continued to tend to Lara's injuries, doing his best to keep her comfortable while he worked on fixing his broken communication device. Despite the fact that they were stuck on a desolate, war-torn planet, Adam felt an unexplainable sense of duty to help this alien princess. There was something about her, something in her eyes, that made him feel as though he had to protect her, like she wasn't just another alien to be ignored, but someone who could change the course of everything. Lara had not been a simple casualty of the war, but a pawn in a game far bigger than either of them. Her father, the alien Baron, had cast her aside when she became a liability, paralyzed, weak, and no longer useful to his ambitions. He hadn't even sent anyone to retrieve her, leaving her to die in the unforgiving wilderness. Adam didn't know why he had chosen to help her. Perhaps it was the shock of seeing someone so discarded, so lost. Or maybe it was simply his inherent nature to never leave anyone behind. Whatever the reason, he had made his choice. Now, the question was how far he was willing to go to ensure her safety. Lara's condition had improved slightly, but the road to recovery was still long. She had been weak, barely able to speak at first, but now she was more alert, her piercing violet eyes watching Adam closely as he worked. As he knelt beside her, fixing his equipment, she spoke. "You're still here," she said, her voice soft yet steady. Adam paused, glancing up from his work. "Why wouldn't I be? You're not the only one stranded here." Lara looked away for a moment, clearly uncomfortable. "You shouldn't be helping me. You don't know who I am, what my family is capable of. My father, he'll send someone to finish the job if they realize I'm still alive." Adam raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. "I don't care about your father or your family," he said finally. "I care about you." Lara's eyes snapped back to him. Disbelief etched across her face. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "You don't even know me." Adam stood and walked toward the window, looking out at the barren landscape. The storm had passed, but the air was still heavy with the scent of ash and decay. "I know enough," he said quietly. "I know what it's like to be abandoned, to feel like you're not worth anything. I know what it's like to be left behind. But I also know what it's like to make the choice to stand up and fight, even when it seems impossible. You may be weak now, but I see something in you. Something worth saving." Lara didn't speak for a moment. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken emotions. Finally, she whispered, "You're wrong. I'm nothing. I'm just a broken tool to be discarded when I'm no longer needed." Adam turned to face her, his expression stern. "You're wrong about that too," he said, his voice firm. "You're not a tool. You're a person, and that means you have value. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise." The words seemed to hit her harder than Adam expected. Lara's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, she looked away, trying to hide the emotion. But Adam saw it. The vulnerability, the fear, and the pain she had been carrying all these years. He walked over to her, sitting down beside her. "You're not alone anymore," he said gently. "I won't leave you. Not like this. Not ever." Lara's eyes met his once more, her gaze searching his face as if trying to understand if he truly meant it. After a long moment, she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. Adam smiled, though there was no real joy in it. He was a soldier, trained to fight, to survive. But there was something about Lara, something that made him want to protect her, to make sure she never felt like she had to fight alone again. The days passed, and the bond between them grew stronger. But even as Lara's health improved, Adam knew their time on this planet was limited. He had to find a way off the world, and soon. The communication device had been repaired, but it was clear that help would not come quickly. The galaxy was vast, and the Baron's reach was long. Adam couldn't risk waiting for someone to find them. He needed to act fast, to make sure Lara was safe from the wrath of her father. But as the hours stretched into days, Adam couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play here. The alien war was just the beginning. The real battle was just ahead. Days turned into weeks, and as Adam and Lara grew closer, the reality of their situation began to set in. Despite his best efforts to repair the communication device, Adam knew deep down that rescue was not going to come easily. The galaxy was vast, and the political machinations of powerful families like Lara's father, the alien Baron, could stretch across multiple systems. Lara's health was improving, but she was still fragile, and every moment spent on this desolate planet was another risk to their survival. Adam had become more than just a protector. He had become a lifeline for Lara, and he could see the change in her eyes. The girl who had once been broken, abandoned by her own father, now had a spark of life in her. She no longer looked at him with distrust, but with a sense of dependence, a silent acknowledgement that he was the only one keeping her alive. Yet, Adam knew that he couldn't stay on this planet forever. He had to find a way out, and quickly. As he sat by the fire one evening, his thoughts drifted to their situation. The remnants of his communication device lay scattered across the table, his attempts at repairs only partially successful. He had managed to pick up faint signals, but nothing concrete, nothing that could guarantee help. The storm had passed, but the planet's harsh conditions remained. Lara sat across from him, her silver hair glowing faintly in the low light. "Do you think we'll make it off this planet?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with uncertainty. Adam didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her face, the same face that had once held nothing but coldness and pride, but now held the depth of someone who had experienced the worst and survived. "I don't know," he said finally, his voice rough with exhaustion. "But I'm not going to leave you here to die. We'll find a way out. I promised you that." Lara looked at him, her violet eyes searching his face. "Why?" she asked, the question coming out as a whisper, almost as if she couldn't believe the words she was speaking. "Why would you help me?" Adam stood and walked over to the small window of their makeshift shelter, looking out at the barren landscape. The distant glow of a dying star cast long shadows across the empty plains. "Because I know what it's like to feel abandoned," he said, his voice carrying a heaviness. "To feel like you don't matter, like you're just a tool to be used and then discarded. I don't want you to feel that way. Not anymore." Lara said nothing for a moment, and then, in a voice barely audible, she spoke. "I thought I was worthless, Adam. After everything that's happened, after my father, I didn't think anyone would care." Adam's heart ached as he turned back toward her, his face softening. "You're not worthless," he said firmly, his words carrying the weight of everything he had come to believe. "You never were. You just needed someone to see that." Lara's eyes welled up with tears, and for the first time since Adam had met her, she let them fall freely. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know what will happen to me. I don't know what to do anymore." Adam walked over to her and knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do anything alone anymore," he said softly. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." The silence between them was filled with understanding, an unspoken bond that had formed between them over the past weeks. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something deeper, something that neither of them could fully explain, but both of them felt. Lara's father, the alien Baron, was powerful, but Adam had learned not to fear power. He had faced battles before, fought wars that seemed unwinnable, and he had always come through. This would be no different. They would escape this planet, and they would take the fight to those who had cast Lara aside. But first, Adam needed to make sure she was ready, that she understood her own worth. He couldn't protect her forever, not from the truth, not from the harsh reality of the world they lived in. But he could help her see that she was capable of standing on her own. As the days passed, Adam and Lara prepared for what was to come. They couldn't stay in hiding forever. It was time to take action, to leave the safety of their shelter and make their way to the nearest city where Adam could try to reach the larger galactic network. They didn't have much time. Every moment they spent on this forsaken planet was one more moment that the Baron's forces could track them down. The sun set on another day, casting the sky in shades of orange and red as Adam and Lara made their final preparations. "Are you ready?" Adam asked, looking at Lara. She nodded, a determined look in her eyes. "I am. Let's go." Together, they set out into the unknown, with nothing but each other and their will to survive driving them forward. As Adam and Lara made their way through the dense, ruined landscape, the sense of urgency grew stronger with every step they took. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the cracked earth, and the wind carried the bitter cold of the planet's unyielding climate. Adam kept a steady pace, his mind focused on the path ahead, but his thoughts were never far from Lara. The journey they had started together was only beginning, and the obstacles they faced were far from over. Lara, though still fragile, had become more resilient with each passing day. Her strength was growing, both physically and emotionally, as she started to trust Adam more and more. The alien princess who had once seen herself as a discarded piece of her father's empire now began to see herself as something more, a survivor. A warrior, perhaps. Adam didn't say much as they walked, knowing that Lara needed her space. She was still processing the reality of what had happened to her and how far she had fallen from the power she once held. The Baron's cruelty weighed heavily on her, and Adam could see the conflict in her eyes. She was torn between the person she had been and the person she was becoming. "Do you ever wonder if it was all worth it?" Lara asked quietly, breaking the silence between them. Adam glanced at her, his expression hardening. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice low. Lara paused, her gaze drifting out over the desolate plains. "Everything I've lost, everything I've been through. Was it worth it? Was I ever truly worth anything to anyone? Or was I just a pawn in a game I never understood?" Adam's heart went out to her, but he knew that now wasn't the time for pity. He had to be strong, for both of them. "You are worth more than anyone ever told you," Adam said firmly. "What happened to you, what your father did, it's not your fault. Don't let him define who you are." Lara looked at him, her violet eyes filled with emotion, but she said nothing. They walked on in silence, the weight of the conversation hanging between them. As they neared the edge of the barren wasteland, Adam's pace quickened. They were getting closer to the city, closer to their first real chance at escaping the planet. But even then, Adam knew it wouldn't be easy. The Baron's forces were still out there, and they would stop at nothing to find Lara. The closer they got to the city, the more Adam's senses were on high alert. He kept checking their surroundings, looking for any sign of movement, any hint that they were being followed. The last thing they needed was to walk straight into an ambush. Finally, after hours of walking, they reached the city outskirts. The towering structures loomed ahead, their dark silhouettes rising against the gray sky. The city, though lifeless in appearance, still held the remnants of its former glory. Buildings that had once been bustling with life now stood as silent sentinels to a forgotten era. Adam motioned for Lara to stay close as they moved through the abandoned streets. He knew they couldn't afford to be seen. They needed to find shelter, a place to regroup and figure out their next move. As they rounded a corner, a sudden noise broke the silence. Footsteps. Adam's heart raced. He motioned for Lara to stay hidden behind a broken wall as he crouched down, trying to get a better look. A small group of soldiers, garbed in the familiar armor of the Baron's forces, appeared at the far end of the street. They were scanning the area, their weapons drawn, their faces grim. Adam cursed under his breath. This was it. They had been found. Without hesitation, Adam grabbed Lara's arm, pulling her toward the nearest building. They ducked inside, the door creaking shut behind them. Adam's pulse raced as he tried to steady his breathing. They had to think fast. The soldiers were close now, and it was only a matter of time before they would search this building. "We can't stay here," Adam whispered urgently. Lara nodded, her expression hardening. "What's the plan?" she asked, her voice low but determined. Adam's mind raced as he scanned the room. There was no escape from the building, but he could still use the environment to his advantage. "We'll have to fight our way out," he said, his voice steady. "It's our only option." Lara looked at him, her eyes widening. "You're serious?" she asked, disbelief in her voice. Adam nodded, his gaze locking onto hers. "We've come this far. We're not backing down now." The soldiers were getting closer, their footsteps echoing in the hallway outside. Adam quickly surveyed the room, gathering what little he could use for their defense. Lara stood beside him, her face set with determination. She may have once seen herself as a broken pawn, but now she was standing beside Adam, ready to fight for her survival. Together, they would face whatever came next, because they both knew that if they didn't, the Baron's forces would destroy them. The door to the building creaked open, and the first soldier stepped inside. Adam's hand gripped his weapon tightly. This was it. They were no longer running. They were going to fight, and they would do whatever it took to survive. As the door creaked open and the first soldier stepped inside, Adam's grip on his weapon tightened. His heart raced, but his focus was sharp. This was no longer a simple escape. It was a battle for survival. Lara stood beside him, her eyes filled with fear, but there was something else there now, determination. She had come a long way from the broken girl who had first been abandoned on this planet. She was ready to fight. The soldiers moved cautiously, their armor clinking as they stepped deeper into the room, scanning every corner for any sign of movement. Adam knew that if they didn't act fast, they would be trapped. He motioned to Lara, signaling for her to stay low. She nodded, her breath steadying as she positioned herself behind a stack of debris. The soldiers had no idea they were there, but Adam wasn't about to let them get close enough to find out. He held his breath, waiting for the right moment. The first soldier stepped closer, his weapon raised. Adam struck first, emerging from his cover with a powerful leap that knocked the soldier off balance. The man staggered back, but Adam was already on him, disarming him in one swift motion before slamming him to the ground. The soldier grunted in pain, but Adam didn't give him a chance to recover. He grabbed the soldier's weapon, quickly turning it on the rest of the squad. "Move!" Adam shouted to Lara, his voice low and urgent. She didn't hesitate. With a swift movement, she darted across the room, grabbing another weapon from a nearby soldier who had been knocked to the ground. The remaining soldiers reacted quickly, but they were no match for Adam and Lara's combined skill. Adam moved with precision, taking down another soldier with a quick strike to the chest, while Lara kept the remaining two soldiers at bay. Her movements were fluid, almost instinctive. Adam couldn't help but marvel at how much she had grown in such a short time. Once, she had been a princess who had never known a life outside the safety of her father's palace, but now, she was a fighter. The last soldier standing tried to retreat, but Adam wasn't about to let him escape. With a final surge of energy, Adam charged forward, knocking the soldier to the ground and pinning him beneath his knee. "Tell me where your commander is," Adam demanded, his voice cold and threatening. The soldier hesitated, but Adam applied more pressure, his patience wearing thin. "I won't ask again." The soldier finally spoke, his voice strained with fear. "We were sent to find the princess. The Baron knows she's alive. We're just the first wave. There's more coming." Adam's blood ran cold. The Baron was closer than they thought. They were running out of time. He didn't waste another moment. "Get up," Adam ordered the soldier, pulling him to his feet. "You're going to help us escape." The soldier shot him a look of disbelief, but Adam didn't care. He grabbed the soldier by the collar and dragged him toward the door. Lara followed closely behind, her expression hard and focused. The fight had left her breathless, but she didn't show it. "We need to move fast," Adam said, his voice urgent. "They'll be sending more reinforcements. If we're going to survive, we need to get out of here now." The soldier led them through the winding corridors of the building, his earlier bravado gone. He knew they had no choice but to cooperate. As they emerged into the streets, Adam's eyes scanned the area for any sign of the Baron's forces. The city was eerily quiet, the buildings towering over them like silent giants. It was a stark contrast to the chaos they had just left behind. Lara glanced around, her face tense. "Where are we going?" she asked. Adam didn't hesitate. "To the nearest outpost. There's a safe house there. We can regroup and plan our next move." Lara nodded, trusting Adam's judgment. She had learned to rely on him in ways she never had before. They had come too far to turn back now. But as they made their way through the streets, Adam couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. His instincts told him they weren't alone. He quickly scanned their surroundings, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Still, the sense of being hunted lingered. "We're not safe yet," Adam muttered under his breath. "Stay close." The tension in the air was thick, and every step felt like they were walking on a knife's edge. The city's towering buildings seemed to close in on them, the shadows growing longer as the sun dipped below the horizon. Adam knew that the Baron's forces wouldn't give up so easily. They would be relentless in their pursuit of Lara. He glanced at her, her eyes filled with a quiet resolve. She had come so far, but Adam knew they still had a long way to go. "Whatever happens," Adam said, "we fight together. We're in this until the end." Lara gave him a small, determined smile. "Together," she repeated, her voice steady. As they moved forward into the unknown, Adam couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. Against all odds, they were still alive. And together, they might just have a chance to win. They had proven that even the most unlikely of allies could become unstoppable. Now, it was time to take the fight to the Baron and show him that no one, no matter how powerful, could control their fate. As Adam and Lara continued their journey through the abandoned streets, the weight of their situation grew heavier with every step. The silence that surrounded them was unsettling. The once bustling city now a ghost town, with only the distant echoes of their footsteps breaking the stillness. Adam's mind raced, constantly scanning their surroundings for any sign of danger. He could feel the tension in the air, a sense of being hunted, even though they had managed to slip past the soldiers. The safe house was still a few miles away, and every moment that passed felt like a countdown to when the Baron's forces would catch up to them. "Keep moving," Adam urged, his voice low but urgent. Lara nodded, her face set in determination, though her exhaustion was evident. She had come a long way since the days when she was broken and discarded, but Adam knew that the trials they faced now would test her in ways she could not yet imagine. As they rounded a corner, Adam's eyes locked on a figure in the distance, someone standing just outside an alleyway, watching them with a calculating gaze. He froze for a moment, his body tense. Lara noticed his reaction and followed his gaze, but the figure was gone before she could make out any details. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam nodded, his instincts telling him that something wasn't right. "Stay close," he said. "We're being watched." The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he scanned the area again, but there was no sign of the figure. "We need to be careful. This place is too quiet." They pressed on, moving faster now, their footsteps quickening as they neared the outskirts of the city. Adam knew the Baron's forces would be relentless in their pursuit of Lara, but he wasn't prepared for the feeling of eyes constantly watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. As they reached a small alleyway, Adam motioned for Lara to stay behind cover while he checked the surroundings. He carefully peered around the corner, scanning the street for any signs of movement. It was then that he saw it. A small, unmarked transport vehicle parked several blocks away, its engines running. The figure from earlier was now inside, speaking urgently to someone over a communication device. Adam's mind raced. He had to make a decision fast. "We need to move," Adam said, his voice sharp. "Now." Lara looked at him, her expression questioning. "What's going on?" "We've been found," Adam said, his voice low but urgent. "There's a transport nearby, and they're looking for us." Without another word, Adam grabbed Lara's arm and pulled her deeper into the alley, his heart pounding in his chest. They had to act quickly. There was no time to waste. The safe house could still be a couple of miles away, but they couldn't risk being caught. They had already fought their way out once, and Adam knew they couldn't rely on luck to get them through again. "Can you keep up?" Adam asked, glancing back at Lara. Her face was set with determination, but he could see the toll the journey had taken on her. "I'm not stopping," she said through gritted teeth. "We're in this together." Adam smiled, a small, fleeting expression, before they broke into a run. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the alley as they sprinted toward the safe house. But the feeling of being pursued never left Adam's mind. Every time he glanced over his shoulder, he expected to see the transport closing in on them. They reached the end of the alley, and Adam slowed down, his senses heightened. "Stay low," he whispered, pulling Lara behind a nearby dumpster. They crouched down, their breaths ragged as they waited for the transport to pass. Seconds felt like hours as Adam kept his gaze locked on the street, watching for any sign of movement. The tension was unbearable. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the transport drove past, its headlights briefly casting shadows over their hiding spot. Adam let out a quiet breath of relief, but he knew they weren't out of danger yet. "We've got to keep moving," he said, his voice steady. "The longer we stay here, the more chance they'll catch up." They continued on, their pace slower now, but just as determined. As they neared the outskirts of the city, Adam's thoughts turned to the safe house. It was their last hope, their final chance to regroup and plan their next move. If they could just get there, they would have a fighting chance to stay ahead of the Baron's forces. But Adam couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Baron wouldn't stop until he had Lara, and Adam knew that the real battle was just starting. But for the first time in a long while, Adam felt a glimmer of hope. They had survived this far, and as long as they stuck together, there was nothing they couldn't face. Together, they would fight for their freedom, no matter what it took. As Adam and Lara made their way through the quiet streets, the tension between them was palpable. They had barely escaped the pursuit of the Baron's soldiers, but Adam knew this was only a temporary victory. The Baron's reach extended far beyond this city, and the closer they got to the safe house, the more Adam's instincts screamed that danger was still closing in. The city around them was eerily silent, the buildings looming like hollow shells of a once thriving metropolis. Lara was still recovering from the physical toll the journey had taken on her, but Adam could see the fire in her eyes. She wasn't the same frightened princess who had been abandoned by her father. She had grown stronger, not just in body, but in mind as well. How much farther? Lara asked, her voice steady but weary. Adam glanced at the map in his hand, his eyes scanning the route. Not far. Just a few more blocks. Lara nodded, her face set with determination, but Adam could tell the exhaustion was beginning to weigh on her. The adrenaline from their escape had worn off, leaving only the cold, harsh reality of their situation. As they rounded another corner, Adam felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Something wasn't right. His instincts told him they weren't alone. He motioned for Lara to stop and duck behind a crumbled wall. They both crouched low, their breathing shallow as they waited, listening for any sign of movement. The air was thick with tension, and Adam's senses were on high alert. He could hear footsteps in the distance, but they were faint, almost as if they were being deliberately muffled. Adam's eyes darted around, scanning every shadow, every corner, but there was no sign of danger, yet. "What is it?" Lara whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," Adam replied, his voice low and tense. "Stay here. I'll check it out." He moved silently, his footsteps barely making a sound as he crept toward the corner of the building. His heart was pounding in his chest, his every sense tuned to the slightest noise. As he reached the edge, he peered around cautiously, his eyes quickly scanning the street. At first, he saw nothing, just the empty, desolate buildings stretching in both directions. But then, in the distance, he saw them. Figures moving in the shadows, their movements deliberate and coordinated. They were soldiers, but not the Baron's usual troops. These were different, more stealthy, more skilled. Adam's blood ran cold. They were after them. "Lara," Adam hissed, turning back to where she had been hiding. But to his shock, she wasn't there. Panic surged through him. Where had she gone? He spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon, but as his eyes scanned the street, he saw her. She was standing, facing the approaching soldiers. "Lara, get back," Adam shouted, his voice urgent, but Lara didn't move. Instead, she stood there, her posture straight, her expression one of quiet resolve. "It's too late, Adam," she said softly, her voice carrying just enough to reach him. "They're here." Adam's heart clenched as he saw the soldiers closing in. They weren't just here to capture her. They were here to end this, to wipe out the last remnants of resistance. Lara's eyes met his, and in that moment, Adam knew she had made a choice. She was no longer the princess who had been tossed aside. She was a fighter, a warrior. Without another word, Lara stepped forward, her movements graceful yet filled with purpose. The soldiers hesitated, clearly not expecting her to face them head-on. One of them, a tall figure with a scar running across his face, stepped forward. "You're the one we've been sent for," he said, his voice cold, calculated. "Surrender now, and we'll make it quick. Resist, and we'll make you regret it." Lara didn't flinch. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice strong, unwavering. Adam, still hidden in the shadows, watched as the situation unfolded. He wanted to rush in, to protect her, but something in the way Lara stood there, unafraid, made him pause. This was her fight now. The scarred soldier laughed, a low, menacing sound. "You think you can stop us?" he sneered. Lara didn't answer, but as the soldiers moved closer, she raised her hand, and for the first time, Adam saw the power she held within herself. There was a subtle shift in the air around her, an almost imperceptible hum that vibrated through the ground. The soldiers, still approaching, suddenly stopped, confusion spreading across their faces. Then, with a sharp motion, Lara snapped her fingers. In an instant, a wave of energy surged through the air, knocking the soldiers back with incredible force. The scarred soldier was thrown to the ground, his weapon skittering out of reach. The others scrambled to regain their footing, eyes wide with disbelief. Adam watched in awe as Lara, the once weak princess, wielded her newfound power like a seasoned warrior. She was no longer just fighting for survival. She was fighting for her freedom. "Get up," she shouted, her voice fierce. "Get up and face me." The soldiers hesitated, looking at each other, but Lara was relentless. She had learned in the darkest of moments that the only way to survive was to fight back with everything she had. As the remaining soldiers regrouped, Adam knew that this fight was far from over. They were still a long way from safety, but for the first time since this journey began, he felt a sense of hope. Lara wasn't just a princess anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with, and together, They would see this through to the end. The soldiers scrambled to regain their footing, their eyes wide with shock as they tried to comprehend what had just happened. Lara stood tall, her expression fierce, her hands still glowing with the remnants of the energy she had unleashed. Adam watched in awe from the shadows, his heart pounding in his chest. He had always known that Lara was capable of more than she let on, but seeing her fight with such raw power was nothing short of breathtaking. The scarred soldier, still recovering from the blast, glared at Lara with pure hatred in his eyes. "You're a fool," he spat, pushing himself up from the ground. "You think you can defeat us? You think you can escape the Baron?" Lara didn't flinch, her gaze unwavering as she watched him. "I'm not running anymore," she said, her voice cold, filled with conviction. "And I'm not afraid of you or your master." The soldier's face twisted in fury, and with a growl, he signaled for the rest of his team to advance. They circled around her, their weapons drawn, ready to attack. Adam knew they were outnumbered, but he wasn't going to let Lara face them alone. He gripped his weapon tighter, ready to spring into action. Just as the soldiers were about to move in, Lara raised her hand again, her eyes flashing with power. The air around them vibrated, thick with tension. The ground seemed to tremble beneath their feet as she focused all her energy on the soldiers. With a fierce, controlled motion, Lara sent another shockwave toward them, this time much stronger than before. The soldiers were thrown back, crashing into nearby walls and debris with a deafening impact. The scarred soldier barely managed to stay on his feet, his breath ragged as he looked up at Lara, eyes filled with disbelief. How are you doing this?" he demanded, his voice shaky. Lara stepped forward, her every movement fluid and precise, her power radiating from her like an unstoppable force. "This is who I am," she said, her voice steady, filled with authority. "And I'm not going to let you or your Baron control my fate anymore." The remaining soldiers hesitated, fear beginning to creep into their minds. They had underestimated her, but they were soldiers, trained to fight and conquer. They weren't about to back down so easily. "You can't stop us," the scarred soldier snarled, his hand reaching for a device at his belt. "The Baron will send more, and you'll be crushed under his wrath." But Lara wasn't intimidated. She had faced the Baron's cruelty for too long, and now she was in control of her own destiny. "Let him send all he wants," she said, her voice low but filled with power. "We're not afraid of him. Not anymore." Adam stepped out of the shadows, moving toward Lara with a determined stride. He didn't need to say anything. His presence was enough. Together, they stood as a united front, ready to face whatever came next. The soldiers, seeing the unwavering resolve in their eyes, took a step back, fear clearly written across their faces. The scarred soldier's expression twisted into one of anger and frustration, but even he knew when he was outmatched. "This isn't over," he growled. "You've just made a grave mistake." Lara didn't respond. She didn't need to. The message was clear. They were not going to run. They were not going to hide. They would fight, and they would win. The soldiers, realizing they were no longer in control, began to retreat, their heads down, knowing that the fight had been lost. As the last of them disappeared into the distance, Adam turned to Lara, his eyes filled with respect and admiration. "You were amazing," he said, his voice filled with awe. Lara looked at him, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "I've learned from the best," she said quietly, her gaze meeting his. Adam nodded, his heart swelling with pride. She had come so far in such a short time. From the frightened princess who had been abandoned and betrayed to the fierce warrior standing before him now. They had both changed, and they were stronger for it. But Adam knew this victory was only temporary. The Baron was still out there, and he wouldn't stop until Lara was captured. The true battle was still ahead, and they would need to be ready. "We need to move," Adam said, his voice steady. "The Baron will send more forces, and we need to get to the safe house before it's too late." Lara nodded, her expression serious. "Let's go." Together, they moved quickly, but with a sense of purpose. They had faced the first wave of the Baron's forces, and they had won. But this was just the beginning. The real fight, the one that would decide their fate, was still to come. Adam and Lara knew that they would face whatever dangers lay ahead, together. And no matter what happened, they would not back down. Not now, not ever. The safe house was a small, nondescript building on the outskirts of the city, nestled between two tall, crumbling structures. It had the appearance of being abandoned, but Adam knew better. It had been a haven for those who were forced into hiding, a place where they could regroup and plan their next move. As Adam and Lara approached the door, he couldn't shake the feeling that their respite would be brief. The Baron's forces would surely be tracking them, and time was running out. Lara looked at him, her expression determined. "This is it, isn't it?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity. Adam nodded, his gaze never leaving the door. "This is where we make our stand," he said, his voice calm but resolute. Lara's grip tightened around her weapon, her eyes narrowing as she stared at the door. It was a moment of silence before Adam turned the handle and pushed the door open. Stepping inside, the building was dark, but there was a faint light coming from the back room. They moved quickly, staying low, their senses alert for any sign of danger. As they reached the back room, Adam was greeted by an old contact, a grizzled man with a weathered face and sharp eyes. His name was Keel, and he was one of the few people Adam trusted in this godforsaken corner of the galaxy. "I didn't think you'd make it," Keel said with a wry grin. "I thought the Baron's men would have had you by now." Adam gave him a tight smile. "They almost did. But we're still here." Keel nodded, his gaze shifting to Lara. "And you must be the princess," he said, his tone more respectful than Adam had expected. Lara didn't flinch, her posture straight as she nodded. "I'm no princess," she replied, her voice cold but steady. "I'm just someone who's trying to survive." Keel studied her for a moment before speaking again. "Well, you've got the right people by your side now," he said, a slight edge of admiration in his voice. "Adam's got a way of making sure people survive." Lara gave him a short, tight smile, but her eyes were filled with something else, determination, anger, and perhaps a little bit of fear. The weight of her father's betrayal still lingered in her mind, but she knew she couldn't afford to dwell on it now. The Baron's forces were closing in, and she had no intention of becoming a pawn in his game any longer. "What's the plan?" Adam asked, turning his attention back to Keel. Keel handed him a small data pad, its screen flickering as he spoke. "I've been working on a way to contact some of the Baron's rivals. There's a chance we could get some allies, but it's risky. The Baron has eyes everywhere." Adam studied the screen, his mind working quickly. "We don't have much time. If we don't act now, we're dead." Keel nodded. "I know, but we need to be careful. This is going to take everything we've got." Adam turned to Lara, his expression hardening. "Are you ready for this?" Lara met his gaze, her face set with determination. "I've been ready since the moment I decided to stop running," she said, her voice unwavering. Adam felt a surge of pride. She had come so far, from the broken girl who had been abandoned by her father to the fierce warrior standing before him. Together, they had already defied the odds, but now they faced the ultimate test. The next move would determine everything. They had a chance to strike back at the Baron, to take control of their own fate. Adam's mind raced as he considered the risks, but he knew they had no choice. "Then we fight," Adam said, his voice resolute. "No more running. No more hiding." The plan was set into motion. Keel's connections would help them infiltrate one of the Baron's strongholds, a critical location that held the key to the Baron's power. It was a dangerous mission, but it was their best shot at turning the tide. They didn't have the luxury of waiting for reinforcements. The time for action was now. As Adam and Lara prepared for the mission, the weight of what they were about to do settled over them. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their future. For Lara's future. For the chance to break free from the chains that had bound her for so long. "We'll make it through this," Adam said, looking at Lara one last time before they set out. She gave him a determined nod. "We'll make it through together." With that, they set off into the night, ready to take on whatever the Baron's forces threw their way. They had fought hard to get this far, and they wouldn't stop until they had taken back what was rightfully theirs. Together, they were unstoppable, and nothing could stand in their way. The battle for their freedom was only just beginning, but Adam knew one thing for certain. They would see it through to the end, no matter the cost.